all times. Please welcome prolific producer Jason Blum. Hey, Jason. This handsome too, you guys. Okay, this next gentleman brought you the last 5 installments of the Halloween franchise, and we thank him. Please welcome Malik Akkad. Everybody's so handsome. Okay, our next panelist brought you Pineapple Express, The Sitter, and HBO's Eastbound and Down. Meet producer and director David Gordon Green. Yes. I do. Oh, that's what. Jason, you're in Jamie's seat, Jason. That's what happened. He was drawn to me, everyone. He was drawn to me. And last but never least, this phenomenal woman has a resume that includes hits like True Lies, A Fish Called Wanda, and the franchise we're celebrating today. Please welcome the original Scream Queen, Jamie Lee Curtis. Together. Let me be professional. Hi, Jamie. How are you? I loved hearing about your reaction when you first read the script. Can you tell us why you chose to return as the beloved Laurie Strode after 40 years?
Well, you know, Laurie Strode was 17 years old when she was brutally attacked by Michael Myers.
Yes.
A random act of violence that stayed with her entire life. This is a girl who 40 years later never had any mental health services. I'm not joking. You know, she had a small cut on her arm and that was it. And she was raised in the Midwest. I'm sure they sent her back to school 2 days later. And yet she has carried the trauma and PTSD of someone who was attacked randomly.
Yes.
And what was so interesting about the movie that David and company wrote is that what they're honoring today is that trauma, there comes a point where you say, I am not my trauma. I am not, the narrative of my life is not that I'm a victim. And this is a woman who's been waiting 40 years.
That's right.
To face the person who she knows is coming back. To say, I am going to take back the legacy of my life. I'm going to take back my narrative, and you don't own me anymore. And that, weirdly enough, seems to be a bit of a thing in the world today. I don't know if any of you watch, I know you're nerds, but I don't know if any of you watched the ESPYs the other day when all of those women stood on that stage while that MF and their kids in the audience wearing Luigi and Mario hats, so I'm not saying what I really want to say.
Sam Jackson did
rots in prison. Those women stood there and said, you do not control our narrative anymore.
Yes. Come on.
And that is why I am sitting here today in this great Hall H in a movie for David Gordon Green because he wrote a character who is saying, I'm taking back my narrative.
Listen. Good night, everybody. No, listen, I didn't know we were going to have church today. That's wonderful. Hey, I got all my...
Hey, baby, it is Freaky Friday.
You're welcome. David, hi.
Yes, ma'am.
How insanely nervous were you to pitch the idea for this film to the master himself, John Carpenter? Tell me everything about that.
I was very, very nervous. My own childhood trauma was at a 7th grade sleepover party when some jerk played the movie Halloween.
That's fun, yes.
And I got so scared that I called my mom to come get me. So that I was trying to face my demons. So we came up with the I got a nice email from Jason saying, what do you think about the Halloween franchise? Of course, it's a formidable horror film. I'm a huge movie nut, and that became, you know, in my youth, in cinematic education, the pinnacle of horror. So taking this idea with Danny McBride and Jeff Fradley, my co-writers that I went to film school with, you know, they lived down the hall from me in the dormitories in North Carolina, and it was just a dream come true. So we're going to meet him one morning with Jason, and we go over to his house, and he opens the door and says, "What's your story?" So for me, it was incredible. We sit down, and there's like Starman posters on the wall, and literally I'm freaking out at this environment. We tell him the story, give him our pitch. He has a few questions. You know, we have a few questions about of what he thinks, because we want to run some ideas by him. It was really important to us that he be involved, that we write a great role for a great actress, and that we bring John into the game and be a part of the creative conversation. That was just really important to me. In the middle of the pitch, his phone goes off, and it's the iconic theme from Halloween is his ringer. And I was playing it pretty cool until that happened, and then I lost it. But so it was really fun. We had a great conversation, and he said, "Okay, I'm in." He was nodding. He's like, "I like the idea." And then we said, "But we also want you to do the music." And he smiled and he said, "What kind of music?" I said, "Well, ideally it would be the Halloween music, plus maybe a little slice of Christine, and maybe a little splash of Big Trouble in Little China."
Yes.
And he got a kick out of that. We we hugged it out a little bit and said, "Let's go make a movie."
Love that. Thank you for sharing. Malik, hi.
Hi.
Your company, Trancas, has, I hope I said that right. Did I say that right? Trancas. I was so close, you guys. I was in the back, like Trancas, right? Okay. Can't do everything right. Has produced the Halloween franchise from its inception. What did your family see in Michael Myers all those years ago, and why do you think it still resonates and terrifies all of us?
Wow, I just want to say I'm geeking out so hard. The first and last time I was at San Diego Comic-Con was 1976.
What?
I was 7 years old, and there was about 300 people, so it's grown a bit.
And now?
Grown a little bit.
8,000 friends.
And to think that 42 years later, I would be on this stage with these three amazing filmmakers presenting a film that I'm so excited about, and the fans are going to absolutely go crazy over, is just surreal.
Yeah.
So happy Halloween, San Diego. Yes. But to answer your question, I mean, anybody's guess is as good as mine. Michael Myers, because it's that face,
yeah,
and you can sort of put anything of your worst imagination into that blank canvas. You know, it's and maybe that's over intellectualizing. So I'll say he is just the coolest and the baddest and the most terrifying killer in Hollywood cinema.
Yeah, I agree. Jason.
Hello.
This is Lori's big, possibly final confrontation.
Never say
Michael Myers.
Never say
Never.
You just tried to do the mind.
I did. You see, I tried to do the little Jedi mind trick. I was like, okay. So this film could essentially reset the entire series. How freeing is that for you as a producer?
You know, that was really more, I loved Halloween, and I was really excited to do the next version of Halloween, but I had really no idea what that was. And I approached David, and David kind of came up with this idea of giving a nod to the other movies, but really taking what happened in the first movie, which is the best movie, and jumping off and saying what would happen 40 years later. That was really an idea that David and Danny came up with, and my involvement was, I told them I loved it.
I love that answer. Jamie, Lori is a very different woman now than people might assume. Tell me about where we find her and what she's been through since that big night.
Okay, I have one thing to comment on
get in
about
there,
what
girl.
Malik was talking
Get in
about.
there.
Well, no, I'm listening.
Do it.
Part of the job of an actor
Is to listen.
Not just take pictures of yourselves.
It's true. There's a lesson in that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
She said just take pictures.
I actually think what's terrifying is random acts of violence. And I think what made Michael Myers so terrifying was its randomness.
Right.
Here he was, this terrifying physical creature, as we said, in this enigmatic mask. but it's the randomness. It was a small town, this beautiful life of these young girls talking about boys and dreaming, just like all of our, we hope, the childhood of our children have.
Right.
And then you introduce this terrifying thing. And I think you can't, there is nothing scarier than caring about a character and introducing a terrifying element, and that's what makes these movies so terrifying and great. Who we meet, Laurie Strode. So it's 40 years later. Laurie, as I said, had no real support, had no real help. And PTSD is real, people. And trauma is real, and the effects of PTSD and trauma on human beings is profound.
Yeah.
And I think she did the thing that most people do. They drink too much, they bang into people, they try to do relationships. Laurie obviously had a child. That child was taken from her, because can you imagine Laurie Strode on the first day of first grade as a parent?
Right.
At the parent-teacher conference?
Terrifying.
When she raises her hand and the teacher, Miss Smith, says, yes. Hi, what's your exit strategy?
Right.
I'm sorry, what? What is your exit strategy? What happens when Michael,
Right.
This is clearly a woman who was dogmatic about her belief that Michael Myers would come back. So who we meet is a woman who's had her child taken from her, and she lives in complete isolation, basically, waiting for him to come back because she knows he's going to.
That is not a life. Okay. David, would you have something for us?
Oh!
You want to show us something?
You guys want to see something cool? So, when we were preparing for this...
Oh, this is
What, you
this
wanna say
that.
something?
No, I'm not saying nothing.
Come on, David, give it to us.
Special stuff.
David, there's something you have for us.
Something...
David, you have something for us.
So when we found out we were going to come to Comic-Con, and we could talk all day, but one of the things I think is important to try to get across the essence of the movie. So, so we asked the greatest minds of the creative and intellectual communities on Earth to put together a slideshow, a PowerPoint presentation of sorts.
Yes.
And we're just going to show you a bunch of cool stuff.
All right. So we're going to do that right now.
Halloween!
Halloween!